All right, so we're working with the distance formula and midpoint formula foldable. On this video, we're going to be working specifically with the midpoint formula. So you should have folded it as I've shown you instructions for, and go ahead and under midpoint formula, it says m equals, that's midpoint equals, and we're going to write this formula down. So in parentheses, I have x1 plus x2 all divided by 2. You're basically finding the average of the x's. Then do the same thing with y1 plus y2 all divided by 2. And that's going to create your two coordinates for your midpoint. All right, so inside the foldable, if you open the midpoint formula flap, you find this page. So when it says midpoint between 2 points, or the exact halfway, or the average of the x or y coordinates, you are talking about these are giving you hints of like, okay, when you see this, that's how you know to use midpoint. So you identify 2 points, step 1. Identify 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2, and just label them like that. Then you plug them into the formula, and you simplify the terms. So like right here, you're going to do all of this math right here, and then you're going to do all of this math. And it's going to leave it as a coordinate, and a coordinate's just a point, an x, y coordinate. So let's try it. So on this graph, I know it's a little small, so I'll just go ahead and help you out. B is the point 6, 2. Go ahead and write that down. And D is at the point -8, -4. So now underneath, not like too big or anything, I'm going to label one of the points as x1, y1. So I'm going to call this x1, y1. And this is the second point, so I'm going to call it x2, y2. And I just think it helps if you just label underneath. So when you're plugging in your formula, you're like, okay, that's x1. All right, so now plugging into our formula, our midpoint equals x1, which is 6, plus x2, which is right here, which is -8. And then it's always divided by 2. That's part of the formula. And then the y coordinate is also divided by 2, but it's y1, which is 2, plus y2, which is plus -4 is y2, and then it's all divided by 2. So now you simplify. So on the top, you have 6 plus -8. That's -2. -2 divided by 2 is -1. That's your x coordinate. And then on the right side, 2 plus -4, that also is -2. And -2 divided by 2 is -1. So the midpoint, the halfway point between D and B is at -1, -1, which is right there. And it's just kind of nice to go ahead and graph it because as a just check, you can tell, oh yeah, that looks about halfway. So I couldn't just guess it, but I can use my formula and then double check by graphing it just to make sure it looks right. All right, let's try this other example. This is a little bit harder. It says M is the midpoint of AB. So A is one endpoint, that's 3, 7. And then B is the other endpoint. And then M is the midpoint. So it says, find the coordinate of B. So that means you know the midpoint, you don't know both endpoints. So I'm just going to call this x2, y2. And over here, this is x1, y1. The midpoint is 5, 10. So when we're plugging in our formula was x1 plus x2. Well, x1 is 3, x2 we don't know, and then it's divided by 2. On the right side, it was y1 plus y2. Well, y1 is 7, y2 we don't know, and it's divided by 2. That equals our midpoint. So that equals 5, 10. Now, remember that these are coordinates. So your first coordinate, right here, this area right here, this is what gives you the 5. And then the right-hand side, this 7 plus y2 divided by 2, that is what comes together and gives you the 10. So I highlighted it to show you, but what you're going to do is you're going to set this 3 plus x2 divided by 2 equal to 5, and you're going to solve. So we're going to times by 2 on both sides. Sorry, I'm running out of room. That gets you 3 plus x2 equals 10. And then you're going to subtract the 3, and so x2 equals 7. So then you do the same thing over here, this green part. 7 plus y2 divided by 2 equals 10. So you're going to multiply by 2. So you get 7 plus y2 equals 20. And then you're going to subtract the 7. So y2 equals 13. So sorry about the chaos here. It's just was better on my page, but on the screen it's just coming out a little too big. So I'm just going to come over here. So B is x2 was 7, y2 was 13. So B is the endpoint. And you could check it by plugging back in A and B into the midpoint formula and making sure it comes out to be 5, 10, but I'm pretty confident in our work here. But that's about as hard as it'll get when using midpoint. Okay, so we're looking at our notes now. So on the section 1.3 notes, we're looking at example 3, and we're going to use our foldable to solve these problems. So let's look at example 3a. It says the endpoints of RS are R and S. So I'm just going to rewrite them over here. R is 1, -3. S is 4, 2. So since they're endpoints, you're going to label one x1, y1, and the other one x2, y2. It doesn't really matter which one you label as 1 and which one you label as 2. You just choose and commit to it. So now it wants us to find the coordinates of our midpoint. So remember, I'm just going to write down our midpoint formula here so that we can fill it in. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take x1, that's right here, and we're going to plug a 1 in for it. And then we're going to take x2, that's this amount right here, and then we're going to plug it in for x2. So let's go ahead and try this now. So we're going to plug in 1 for x1 and 4 for x2, and it will be all divided by 2. 1 plus 4 is 5, and 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. All right, let's do the same thing, but with the y's. So y1 is -3 plus y2, which is 2, and then it's always divided by 2. -3 plus 2 is -1, and then divided by 2 is negative. 1 divided by 2 is a half, so -1/2 or -0.5. So you could write it as a fraction or as a decimal. It would be okay either way. All right, so let's look at example 3b. So I want you to answer, are we looking for the midpoint or are we looking for the endpoint? All right, so it says, find the coordinates of the endpoint. So you have J, which is 1, 4, and the other endpoint is K, which we don't know. So let's call it x2, y2, since we don't know K. So in our formula, the midpoint equals x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So the midpoint is 2, 1. All right, so then x1 is 1, and we don't know x2. y1 is 4, and we don't know y2. All right, so remember that the x-coordinate 2 is found by this portion of the equation right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to set 2 equal to 1 plus x2 divided by 2. And then this other portion right here is 1 equal to 4 plus y2 divided by 2. Now, it's one large fraction. It's all divided by 2, whichever place you start at. So to get the fraction, to get the x2 by itself, we first need to times by 2. And of course, what you do to one side, you must do to the other. So you get 4 equals 1 plus x2. Then you subtract the 1, and you get x2 equals 3. So 3 is what x2 is. This is our k. Now the same thing over here. Times by 2. So we get 2 equals 4 plus y2. Now subtract the 4. And so we get -2. And we always write our answer as a coordinate because it is a point. So k, our endpoint k, the answer is 3, -2.